2 of your Annunaki soulmating program special topic seminar. Now at the end of part 1, we ended on me saying that I was going to jump right into how Venus came and changed the game. So I'm going to jump straight in, because if you know, you know. So Venus, why and who, what, when, how? This is how you have your abilities to travel to the 5th dimension every time you go to sleep. It's because of the Venus program. And in part 1, I discussed how Venus was sent in by the Draconians, the good Draconians, during the Eden-Orion Wars. Now I want you to look at the night sky and the constellation and all the stars as if they are a 4th dimensional representation of all the past human history of existence. So what do I mean? There is something when we study powers like gods or religion or worship that's called hypostasy. Now, without getting too technical, I'm going to explain it like this. So in some cultures and religions, let's say paganism, for example. Now I'm using this as a very broad term of any earth-based culture. They believe that God, or the ultimate power, the light, whatever you want to call it, can be inhabited in the material. Now this is the main distinction between what we believe and what they believe. And it's not anything bad, it's just a choice. And so, in paganism, you could say technically, and we all can agree on this, that the actual sun, up in the sky, is a god. So, in paganism, you would pray to the sun, and you've seen this in many religions, like in Egypt, where they believe the light comes, in what we see of their records, it was a huge sun-worshipping cult. But in reality, things could have been very different. So in this example, let's just imagine a culture that worships the actual sun outside in the sky, and when it's an overcast day and there are clouds, they get scared because they say, oh, where's God? God is hiding. Or if it thunders, they say, oh no, God is angry. Okay, because the sun is in the sky, so they associated that with God. But in these cultures as well, they believed that the power of the sun or God could also be contained in certain materials. And this is normally what's discussed in books like Abramelin, The Mage. So in books like that, they teach you how to contain literal star power or energy, radiation, into talismans and metals. But not just any metals, specific metals that correlate, writing and talking, that correlate to certain energies that are said to be in the sun. So for this, you would use gold, because gold is supposed to be, what is the symbol for gold? It's supposed to have the sun's power. And so when you get married, which is a Saturnian thing, marriage is Saturnian because it's only done on earth in the way we do it. You will use a gold wedding band to seal that marriage contract with the power of the sun. And so as time went on, people would change some of these things, and some would say, well, I want to wear silver because I want the power of the moon in my marriage. And other people would say, well, no, I don't want to wear a ring. I want to do a hand fasting. Where you tie each other's hands together, because that symbolizes the spiral. And so as religion and all these mental frameworks became less and less constrained, over time, people attributed God to many different things and objects. But now, what's the difference between this or them, these people of Earth, and you, an alien, who is in an Annunaki soulmating program? What is different? Well, there's one law that is the first law, that if you are living in the second age, which we talk about in other studies, or the third one, which we're in now, you cannot ignore this law. And what is that law? I'm being very sensitive in how to say this, so I'm going to use the old wordage, but then we'll explain. So please relax, people. Uh-oh. We always hear about God being jealous, and the first law is worship no one else besides me. And connected to that is, do not make any graven images of anything in heaven here on earth. So that would be like me trying to bring the seventh dimension, which is heaven, to 3D. That is forbidden. It is not done. What is possible is what we do. And that's part of why we were created. And that's the role that Venus played. And that is, you can bring things from the fifth dimension to 3D. And I'm going to go into how that was made possible through Venus. And so because we are not like the pagans, we cannot put our powers into symbols. Even this symbol of ours this is not the container of the power. If you put this on a t-shirt, it's not going to give you like extra psychic powers. It doesn't work like that. Any symbol you draw, you could even draw so-called evil symbols, and they don't do anything. What they do is remind you of stuff that you already have locked in your DNA, your cellular memory. So I'm going to give an example that I talk about in my research paper just to get you on board with the idea of cellular memory, and it's about my dogs. I used to have a couple of dogs. They weren't my dogs alone. They were like the community dogs. There were 8 of them when I first moved to Asia, where I lived. And they were tiny puppies, newborn puppies, beautiful black dogs. And obviously they were with the mother, and the mother had been abused, right? It was a community dog, so everyone used to contribute. I used to pay for the veterinary medicine. One of my friends used to take the ticks out, and the neighbor used to take them to get spaded and stuff. And so when we saw these dogs growing up, the puppies only saw us. So the puppies had no reason to be afraid of anything. But their mother had been traumatized, and she was afraid of everything and anyone. There was a point where she hid the dogs when they were tiny so that she could eat and produce enough milk for them. And then when she decided they could eat food, she allowed them to eat the food. So it was brilliant watching just how ingrained in the morphogenetic field it is for mammals to look after each other. And that's why we chose the Lyrian genes. But it was also very interesting to note how the puppies who had never been touched or abused in a day in their lives had the same response as the mother to us. And that reminded me of something in my Blue Book study, which is available everywhere online, on Scribd, where I quoted some research that was done looking at humans and generational trauma. And the psychological study I quoted in there said that humans exhibit the same thing, where your great grandparents could have gone through a trauma and you could have lived in the lap of luxury your whole life, but you will still feel like you are going through the trauma. And these feelings are valid because they affect how you operate in the real world. And so the power of these images is not in the image itself, but in its ability to trigger an emotion that you might not have even had yourself, that your great-grandparents might have had. And then you're wondering why people go to do past life regression therapy and why they say it works. Obviously, if you use a good technician, like I do. If you want to know, message me. And so when you go on these journeys, you're not going because you are breaking, I don't know, biblical law, or because you are being pagan, or because you are believing in the power of the symbols they use when they take you on these journeys. You are going on them to do and withhold or uphold the second part of what I'm saying or what I'm talking about. And in order to understand that and why you are in this alien human hybridization program, is looking at the stars in the sky as this, a symbol that will trigger your memory through what I'm about to show you into remembering why you are being abducted. It's not an abduction, you are coming to visit us. Okay, so pretend you're watching a movie and suspend your disbelief and receive your divine inheritance. So first, let's look at feelings, because Venus rules feelings. This is a mirror, and you look at yourself with this mirror. If you look at some of our other videos on the 7 lights or the 7 codes, we show Venus with a mirror and a Wi-Fi signal. and that'll all become clear soon. But essentially, just like a mirror, your internet search history is a mirror because it shows us what you feel. If I looked at your internet search history, I would know exactly what your desires are, what your Venus is. And so I want you to think of what we're doing as that. We are mirroring. We are going to use the stars above us, the light, to mirror, as a mirror, to see ourselves. So, feelings, page 606. So as I explained earlier, if you missed part 1, this is the book of shadows of the mind. So just as we use a book for, whatever workshop we're doing, we need one for the mind. Because when we take you to space, we drill you in the mind, don't we? We poke you with needles in the brain. And it's all for your benefit. I'll explain. Well, actually, let me explain that part before you start freaking out. Okay, so why do we poke you in the brain with metal rods? Because in your brain, the visual cortex is at the back. And also at the back of your brain, the things that it controls are when you're a baby and you're born, your id, your desire is in your mouth, right? Because you need food. When you're in the womb, you get food through the mother. So your mouth, your sucking action and swallowing, peristalsis, that action is highly powerful and active. And that's controlled at the back of your brain, near your reptilian side, because you want to survive. And then the things like your feet and everything and your toes are controlled in the front of the brain, because that's like where we discussed yesterday or in the last lesson. That's your, in the front of your brain, that's your human alien hybrid side, your neocortex. It's the new part of your brain. So toes help you to walk and grip things. It's the missing link. And then the reason we poke you in the brain when you get to the moon, the projection we discussed in part 1, is because your visual association areas are here in the back of the brain. This green part here, 18, that's why some of you will notice I always come with a green color or a green light if you dream of me or if you see me in a vision or anything. In my work, I hardly use the green light. I only have it in a smattering of places for that reason, because that's the color I use in the metaphysical realm, you could say. And why green? Because, in your eyes, green is the color you see the most of. Remember in biology, rods and cones. We're not going to go into it that deeply now. We will have courses on it for Star Marines later. So now you know why we need to poke you, just like the ancient Egyptians had to poke up the nose to take out the brain. Well, part of that was because in the olden days, they thought the brain was the heart. And so when you read old texts and they say follow your heart, they don't mean the thing in your rib cage, they mean the pineal gland. And that's why in the first single, Pumelela like water, I mentioned that. There's a desert and your pineal gland, and you need light in there if it's dark. Okay, so I hope that explains why you feel as if people are operating on your brain or shaking your brain or doing something to your brain. That's the reason, because we are dealing with your visual projection areas. So now let's go to feelings so we can learn about Venus. So 606, the number of this planet that we live in is actually planet 606. So how fortuitous that is the number. I'm just paging casually through this so you can see the types of things that it has in there. I mean, it even tells you, what is this? Is this conditioning? Yes, reasoning for action. So you can use a carrot and a stick approach to get people to do stuff, or you can, this is the satanic way, the Freemason way, or you can do this our way, the alien way. Okay, you do a good job. And so, well, actually, in our way, you are the boss. So it's a third way, it's a new way. Okay, feelings. Venus, what does this lady rule? What are we talking about here? What energy are we summoning or going into? Okay, so I'm not going to go too deep into this, so that's why I'm putting it up here, so you take a screenshot and then you can read through it yourself later. Okay, so to act with feeling. In here, they have different stimulus events and then possible cognitive content. So a cognitive content is what you make of a situation. So let's say you see the love of your life, but you haven't said a word to them. You're standing in the grocery store. So what is the content of that? Well, what made you think they're the love of your life? So that breeds different things like emotions, which is energy in motion. So you see a hot girl or hot guy, you say, oh, I'm in love. Then you get emotions. So those emotions is what we talked about in part 1 of this course, which is arousal. The first thing we talked about. What is arousal? So let's say you are aroused, and we are talking about the psychological definition, not any other definition you're thinking of. Go to part 1 to find out. And so that arousal makes you want to do something because it's energy, it's neurons in your body moving around, and they need a goal or a behavior. Otherwise, they make you crazy or neurotic, as Sigmund Freud used to say. And so you want to do something about it. You want to tell her or him, hey, I like you. Can I get your number? Let me say something. And the function of this entire feeling has a goal, has an end result in mind. So it's not that you are wanting to get the number of this guy or girl so that you can fall in love just because they made your heart go padam padam. It's because you want to procreate. You want a family. You want to leave your essence here on this planet the same way all the 50,000 people, the 25,000 couples who made you left on this planet so that you could find out who you were. Because they are gone in other dimensions now. And by us building this bridge, we are just continuing the thing that they started ages ago and completed. We are just like the manifestation of it in the 3D, which means it's old news. Because once something manifests into 3D, it's old news. Because it's such a dense vibration. So everything I'm going to be telling you has already happened. Okay, you're just watching a movie. So there's this, and now you know how to do your emotional things. So whenever you are in an emotional situation or being reactive or wanting to be reactive, as we talked about in lesson 1, the reptilian brain, this is how you stop the reptilian brain from taking over and making you fall into the Draco faction by default. Because our technology won't be able to... Look, you'll never go into the Draco faction. It's impossible. So it's not even... It's the humans who need to worry. Okay, so let's just make another... No, it's fine. You took a screenshot. So there's this huge war between Eden and Orion. And the Dracos from the way back past, the Elohim, the actual people who came out of the 7th dimension and created us, they felt bad and they created this machine. when you think of a machine, think of yourself as a human machine. You are a human machine. Because you are more than hardware. You are more than flesh and bone. There's a soul underneath, and we talked about that in part one. What is a soul and a body and blah, blah, blah. So that makes you a biomachine because you need fuel, energy for your cells, food, and you have a limited time span in this form, in this model, in this machine. And so if I am making these machines, I want to keep some sort of uniformity. Like, what makes a BMW a BMW? I don't even know. Okay, let's say a Mercedes. What makes a Mercedes a Mercedes? I mean, why is it fine? I have some friends who want the sleek, SLK Mercedes, but they can only afford like the A series or A class, and they look like dads, but they're kids, but they feel like super rich because they are driving this symbol. Okay, so that's the same with us, with our soul. We, even though we look different, we have different cultures and religions and families, we still have that thing that makes us want to come to earth because there's stuff you can do here that you just can't do anywhere else in any other dimension. And that's the thing we're talking about. That's why this machine was created, to uphold that thing that was set out when they came from the seventh dimension to here, to all of this place. So what is this thing? So this occurred all in the fourth dimension. Because just like your friend who likes driving a Mercedes from 1942, just because it's a Mercedes, even if it's broken or a jalopy, it's in the fourth dimension, which is the dimension of the mind. And in the dimension of the mind, dimension. Okay, we're changing dimension to dimension. That's my goal. So in the dimension of the mind, everything exists all at once. Another word that you call it is chaos. It is just a nightmare. And we hear about this chaos, as we talked about in part one, in the story of Tiamat, who used to be on this earth, and this earth was just thunderstorms and chaos everywhere, right? The big dragon. But what people don't say is that that chaos actually stems from this, the Eden Orion Wars. Okay? That's what caused the big disturbance and the need for the fourth dimension. So how did the fourth dimension, or why did it need this thing? So I want you to think of dimensions as carriers, carrier signals. If you go to my Instagram, you will see a highlight titled, this is Charlie Manna. You will see a highlight titled Star Marine. And in the cover it says, get it? Because I'm not telling you anything you don't know. I'm reminding you. I'm like, guys, wake up. I'm like how my teachers used to be to me, shaking me, saying, what are you doing? Wake up. Okay, but I understand that it's difficult because, like, you're an alien? What? But you know, because you've seen it. I'm not telling you anything you didn't see, and you know it's real because how did I get into your brain and see it? I'm not the government of here. I'm the government of Arcadia. But anyway, if you go look at that, it has all the evidence where I show you the prophecy and the proof. I tell you there's going to be a flood because of Jupiter and Neptune. And then I show you private messages I sent to people warning them. And then I show you the news reports of the flood, and it all has dates and timestamps on it. So that's the nice thing about proof. It's not chaotic, it's order. Okay? And then if you look further into my work, you'll find more proof. In part 1, I showed you other proof. I have proof for days. Because if you're going to believe you're an alien and come to know that you really are, you need evidence. I'm like doubting Thomas. If I saw Jesus, I would have been like, I want to put my finger through the hole. I want to know. Everyone used to joke that I'm doubting Thomas, reincarnated. And so proof is vital for me, for my personal life journey in my personal earth. I need proof. Sorry. But I didn't even get confirmed. I went and had all these trainings. I went to Knights Templar schools. I went to Illuminati schools. But I never signed or took the oaths because I was like, I want to know what am I actually getting involved in first. Then I will decide. Because, contracts are binding in this life and the next. And this is what I'm trying to tell you. We are part of a covenant. We are part of a contract, a promise. And, this is the juicy part, my favorite part. To tell you what that is, because this is what makes life fun and worth living and making babies and having families and protecting each other. It's all about the covenant. Okay, so we have this huge war, and then the Dracos send Venus as a machine to create dimensions. Why? Because they needed to stop the war and put the people making the war in a jail, a prison. Let's not say that. Let's say a vessel, a container. So when we talk about containers, we're talking about, I want you to think of carrier signals. So a container is a carrier signal which we can measure with bandwidth. Bandwidth is the amount of space. I'll use this color just for purposes of illustration only. Okay, so this is a bandwidth. Within this bandwidth, I can fit a certain amount of light of a certain kind. So a bandwidth holds a certain volume of light and a certain kind of light. So what is a kind of light? It is a frequency. So a frequency is an oscillation. It's a movement of a particle, light or sound, at a certain rate. Now, the slower a sound oscillates, you have a longer waveform and a lower vibration. A low vibration is a dense vibration. And a dense vibration means you can only fit a limited amount in the carrier. So this is limited. These are the most limited frequencies of light. If you have a remote control at home, let's use that as an example, not as a fact, as an example, a way of viewing things. So Your remote control at home, for example, operates using infrared light. Infrared light is very slow moving oscillations. So slow you can't see it. Other animals can see it, but you can't see it. And it's so slow and low, it has been used in military applications to, do stuff. We're not going to get into that. Go look up that actress who invented Wi-Fi and Bluetooth and all of that. That's some cool stuff. We're going to talk about that in the Celebrities in Lumania course. Okay, so anyway, you can only fit a limited amount or volume in a bandwidth. So dimensions, let's say if dimensions exist in light, let's throw that out there. Dimensions that are made to carry or access this low vibrational dense frequency exist. And one of them, you know it. It's called Bizarro World. And in Bizarro World, that's where all the nightmares live, all the things that we talked about in part 1 that emanate from the reptilian brain. And so if you are going to stop a war between Lyrians and reptilians over a certain device or technology and sharing, really, what it comes down to, then you need to create that device, or the people who need to create that device need to be from this dense field, because they're the only ones who will know or have the technology to access it, to create it, right? Because remember, the elders came down with all the light from the 7th realm and then created these 2 beings, which we're going to get to. And then one of them, the Draco, that is represented by the Dracos, set off this entire chain. And then the other one, which is represented by the Lyrans, set off this entire thing. And we're going to get to who that is and where they are and the proof. Because again, I'm a proof guy. The proof is there. I'll show you. You can see it in the sky. Okay, so we've got this idea, right? Carrier signals and bandwidth and frequency. Now, let's make another frequency band. The reason I'm putting this at the bottom, and you've noticed me do it a lot, is because I don't want you to think of top and bottom, high and low, as actual positions. Hi, Drew. I don't want to think of high and low in positions. I want you to think of them as concepts, okay? Because the north, I live in the southern hemisphere, and you live in the northern hemisphere. But who said I'm in the south and you're in the north? Do you know what I mean? So here we will talk about high frequencies, even though I've put it at the bottom. That's on purpose. Okay, so now let's talk about high frequencies. High frequencies are frequencies that oscillate very, very fast. And they can have a higher amplitude because of that. Even if they're not loud, this is something we think about when I'm making music and I'm equalizing my songs. Sometimes when you're equalizing a song, if I have a high-pitched instrument like a violin, I can get away with dropping the volume, the decibels of the violin, so low, but because it's a high frequency sound, it is perceived as coming out as loud. And why would I do that? Because maybe I have another instrument that I want to separate it from, like my vocal track or my bass. So my bass would be here, very dense. And so my bass takes up the left-hand side of the equalizer, the low frequency range. And to create separation so that you can hear each instrument in its own dimension, so it's not mud, I will change the frequencies of the volume of the violins, which means I can fit more in here because I can drop the volume, right? You still with me? Yes? Because a high pitch sound sounds louder than a low pitch sound, even if the low pitch sound is louder on the actual radio or system you're listening on, right? So this frequency allows more light, more what? More light. And this is the ideal situation, right? But because they came out of the seventh dimension, the perfection of the seventh dimension, and came here, and it's the seventh dimension to us, but outside, it's actually the 14th dimension that they came from. But anyway, for us here, it's the seventh. We can consider it the seventh dimension. So you understand that we can fit limited frequencies here in Bizarro World and more frequencies here in Lumania. Now, Lumania is connected to a place called Arcadia. Arcadia, my fellow aliens, is your real home. That's why you don't like it here. That's why you always dream of these beautiful mountains, these beautiful places. It's all coming from Arcadia. When we talk about the Philadelphia experiment in the course, I'll reveal to you how the government is involved and all of that. But for now, whenever you dream of this beautiful place, you're dreaming of Arcadia. And again, I told you there's proof in the sky, and I will show you. So when we talk about containers and Venus being a container, Venus came as a machine, rather, to build containers, to build frameworks like this. Because another way of describing this is, you can say it's a dimension. So now you have two dimensions. But there are different kinds of light, right? In fact, there are 7 lights here. And I'm not telling you that, science is telling you that. Newton is telling you that because an apple fell on him and then he looked in a prism and he saw 7 lights coming out of white light. So those 7 lights are the lights of dimensions that we can see here, that our DNA has been activated to see. But before that, it was limited. It was limited until Venus came to make even more vessels of light. And so I want you to take that in, and we're going to come back for part 3, where I show you in the sky the constellations of where we actually come from. And then I'll explain if there really are aliens in the sky or not, and what people are seeing up there, and why it's better to be part of the Annunaki soulmating program than to just be a random person here on Earth. So we'll come back for that within the next 12 to 16 hours. Just keep on the lookout. Part 3 of your soulmating program. In the meantime, you can go look up the proof that I've given you. You can watch part 1 if it's available. You can go to Scribd and look up this research, which was paid for by the South African government, Department of Arts and Culture, who paid for my education. And it is all about me and why you can trust what I have to say. Because I might be an actor, but I know what I'm talking about. And if you need any more proofs about me and my background, you can ask me. I'm happy to send them. I work for the light, so you can know whatever you want. And just find the other stuff on Instagram. And the music, which is made using light codes, you can find it on YouTube and Lights Within One, yes. You can find it on YouTube and here on Spotify. Look up Night Game ARG. We will talk about what this is because this is a machine designed to get you connected to the spaceship, for goodness sakes. Okay, we'll be back.